Brewtallyspeaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. For over 30 years, Rockabilia has been the go-to destination for all things band merch. With over 500,000 items in their online store and collaborations with today's hottest bands, you're sure to find something you love. Use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total order. So go pick up your favorite new piece of merch now over at Rockabilia.com. Now, on to the show.
Say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Brewtallyspeaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guests are Justin and Robert of Revis. For everyone who has been listening for a long time, almost from the beginning of the podcast, especially the YouTube people who have found the podcast, you got your wish. I have Justin back. We talk all things Revis with him and Robert. And honestly, I feel like I just got to say, like, as a fan of this band, it's a little bit hard not to kind of do a little bit of nostalgia and looking backwards while also looking forwards. This is episode 470. I'm currently in the throes of thinking about episode 500, thinking about the journey the show has taken me on, thinking about where it started to where it is now. And Justin and Revis, by proxy, are essentially a big part of the beginning of the story of this podcast. When I had started the show and I just saw this in a Facebook time hop memory thing, that essentially in a matter of a week, or a few days, I should say, as of when I had made the post, but I basically had a bucket list of people I wanted to have on the show. I think there was about 25 people. And some of it was just as simple as if I can get someone from this band. It wasn't even I think the fifth year goal was get someone from Every Time I Die. And then I think about 2 months later, I got Andy. So I kind of had crushed a lot of my goals, even those ones I had set for so far out right away. But Justin and or Revis, someone from Revis, was a bucket list guest for me. So to get him right away was really huge. And the other thing that, it's so tied to me and the show is it's the one that kind of made me realize that things aren't as they may seem. And what I mean by that is I put out that episode on the audio side and it did okay, but the YouTube version crushes. Like, it is still one of the most commented on videos I have. It is one of the more viewed podcasts I have of the show. And what gets interesting about that is it sort of gave me that spark of like, oh, well, I should try to put it over here. I should try to branch out and be more of who I am, because you might look at me, or most people might look at me and go, why were you into a band Revis? Like, how do you guys, the Venn diagram doesn't seem like it'd be there based on the things you say you like. And to me, I think that it really allowed me to feel okay and comfortable with doing what I felt comfortable with. There's so much of looking back at this podcast where it started from a place of insecurity on my side, where I just didn't feel capable of doing this. And maybe to some of you, I don't, and I'm not. But it's a thing where Justin taking the time, seeing how well everyone loved that episode so early into the show really gave me kind of a self-confidence boost I didn't have, that maybe I was onto something, and that even if it's not the biggest band that you've ever heard of, that if it's important to you, it's important to somebody else. And there still kind of is that integrity of everything. But I also think what's interesting now that I'm approaching episode 500, that this is, 470, that I think Justin was episode 30 something, that it becomes this thing where it's kind of hard not to look in the past, present, and the future. And something that even in this chat that I found really interesting was that where I feel the last one left off with a lot of question marks about a lot of things, that I feel like this one, especially if you watch it, if you're watching and about to watch the interview, I definitely think that something I notice is maybe something that I'm trying to be more mindful of in my own marriage and my own relationships, of there seems to have been growth of the individuals, but as a group, understanding that maybe things that made you guys mad at one another, like you realize it doesn't matter. That the two of them, Justin and Robert, really did a great job, I felt like, of understanding who they are, the roles they play within the band, within their own personal lives and so forth. And it just feels like there's a place of like content, but still like, man, we wasted maybe a lot of past time that we can't ever get back. So let's really not make that mistake ever again. And I was even reminded as I was thinking about this episode, knowing that I was going to have to record an intro and outro and stuff, of thinking about how I've kind of traversed some of those things in my own life. Like when I was younger, in my mid-20s, early 30s, there were some roommates that I happened to have with my now wife, and things just didn't pan out for a multitude of reasons. And there was some ill will and animosity held on my end because I felt like I had been done wrong and so forth. And for me, it honestly took losing some other people that had lived in this house and realizing that things aren't forever. And honestly, in the grand scheme of things, it's a lot of things are not that important to hold grudges over. So if there was still some semblance of a friendship or something that kept you guys together, then it probably is still there. You just kind of need to, in some instances, bury your own ego, talk about it, and move forward. And then when you're able to kind of do that, it's crazy like how better things are, and how you're on the other side going like, why were we fighting? Why did we not take advantage of this time we have? And I feel like that's just kind of the season that Revis as a whole is in right now, is kind of really enjoying each other's company, doing it for no one else other than for themselves. And honestly, as someone who does something in a sort of creative space, I feel like that is always the most important thing, is to satiate yourself and don't worry about anybody from the outside or anything like that. And usually that's where the good stuff is when you kind of do it from a pure place. And it seems like, by all accounts, that's what we got with Revis right now. Without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Justin and Robert, and I'll talk to you on the other side of it. That's all that's going. Honestly, I think the hardest thing has been to not feel semblances of like anger and frustration through this whole thing. I think I can't really speak for a lot of people, but in talking to a lot of friends, male friends, I'll say, that are around roughly my age, like in like 40-ish, I think we're all kind of predisposed to kind of want to be like able to do things on our own without needing help. That we are a kind of a proud generation of men. And I think men in general are a proud bunch. So it's hard at times to as not being a burden, especially in a marriage, like where it's like my wife has to essentially do everything for me, and it's hard to not feel like I'm pulling my weight in these various relationships. And so that has been a struggle for me mentally, to kind of deal with and reconcile. I think I'm getting better at it, but I would be lying if I said that there weren't days like where I just like had meltdowns and, was frustrated at the situation as a whole and feeling like it wasn't like I did anything to deserve it. But I think as we kind of learn as we get older, and I think I've kind of learned going through therapy a couple of different times, that it's a thing where you got to kind of remember that like life's not happening at you. It's not something that like is just happening and it's like, oh, it's happening to me only. That it's like it's happening and you just have to deal with it as it's going. And I think the other part that gets frustrating about this is like literally the day before my 40th birthday is when I should be out of my non-weight bearing phase. So it's like it just shot my birthday plans and everything kind of to hell. And I'm just like, this is not how I envisioned bringing in 40. Like I had more ideas and like trips and stuff. And it was just like, okay, it's really hard to look at a calendar and just go, okay, my life's so easy that I can just put it on hold for like 2 to 3 months right here, and it's just not going to be an issue. So
It's never
it's
an easy time to do that.
no,
You're
and
gonna
I
go
think like
into a
the
good.
thing. Good.
I was gonna say you're gonna go into a good decade healthy though, man. Once you come out of this, it'll be good.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I kind of have to keep reminding myself, and honestly, I feel like I could kind of pose the same thing to you because I think in all of this, I'm kind of learning more patience and kind of a sentiment that I say a lot, but I think I'm kind of rediscovering what it really means, which is kind of things happen for a reason and when they're supposed to.
Mhm.
So that being said, I feel like that's just as good of a segue as I would ever have to ask you, here we are now. The band has, was around in the early 2000s, 21 years ago, put out like the first record. We're kind of working on a second album. It came and went, didn't happen. The band sort of was disbanding, but not, came around, new music. Then the band went away, and now you're back. So what, I guess, was the catalyst of getting back together?
Oh man, missing you, right? Like missing each other, wanting to do it again. Missing brothers and
Yeah,
you know
and opportunities.
yeah.
I mean, like you said, seasons come and things change, and all of a sudden you're granted an opportunity,
Yeah.
and the stars align, and you can kind of like things are set up to where it's possible,
Yep.
right?
That's very true. And we owe it all to our fans. Because they never went away. They were very loyal to our music and the hope for some more. You know, and we have a lot more. Am I allowed to cuss anymore? Or I have a whole lot of
Yeah.
ideas coming from me. Justin is overwhelming me on a daily basis with his ideas, and it's so much fun to capture them. We're here in the studio now. We're constantly working. It's a lot of fun. It really is.
Something I like to kind of navigate with the guests is sort of the process of how do we as people navigate life in various ways, and kind of the growth of us as people, because I think instinctively I think that we can all learn from each other. It just kind of depends on, are you willing to listen and take in something and think about it and kind of find the message or something that someone can bestow upon you. So to me, I don't want to necessarily just preach on what was, but I think it's kind of interesting to look back. Places for Breathing as a title. I don't know where it came from initially, but I feel like, does it resonate with you now? And the songs, do they resonate with you differently 20 plus years on?
I think so for me. They
Yeah.
do. They do. Go ahead, man. What do you?
Well, I'm. It's not like it's not still a part of us because it was something that we created. For to look at it as if how I feel about it now, I'm still very proud of it. I think that its legs are still standing. I think that it was a very good album. I don't think it got as much availability to people as I would think that it should have. But that's to wish in one hand and you know what in the other. But like I still am very proud of it. I still would happily and joyfully sing and perform any of those songs. I think that it's exciting whenever you can respect that as an artist, not be embarrassed of it, and then just move forward. As we've matured, as we've gained wisdom, so does the music that we write.
Mm-hmm.
So does the perspective at which we write.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at Places for Breathing, you're looking at an album that was written by 18 to 22-year-olds, right? So you have that perspective, right? And then as you move forward, and especially where we're at now, we're men with families, we're men with like a lot of responsibilities, and so it does influence us. But I think it's done nothing but influence us in a terrific manner.
Yeah, totally. And in the being proud of it is something that we all feel. We're all really proud of that. In a humble way, of course, but there's been so much growth between then and now, so much experience, and our tastes have really grown, in terms of our palette and what we like to listen to musically and what we've, played in our time away from each other.
Right. Yeah.
You
You've gone down avenues with other artists and with other huge.
You too, and
Yeah.
you've been writing a
You,
lot,
you kind of pick from your road,
yeah,
and when you come back, you're like, hey, I know this now.
right,
Oh, I know this now. Oh,
yeah,
well then, Revis is going to sound a lot. It's going to sound different, right?
exactly. It's Justin's vocal thread throughout this new music really ties everything together, but we're getting experimental with some of this stuff, and really maintaining some authentic Revis vibes, like the huge heavy guitars. But we're doing those a little bit more organically, than the first record, and we're satisfying ourselves in a really cool way this time around creatively, which I just find awesome.
It's funny because when listening to Bottles of Lightning the last week or so in preparation for this, it's funny because one of the things as a mediocre guitar player at best, that always gravitated me toward the first record was the use of like the whammy pedal, like the pitch shifting and stuff like that of the notes. And it kind of was such I feel at the time, looking at a band like Korn, like they used a lot of effects in a completely different manner than you were used to hearing people use that. But the whammy was a big component of their sound, of how they used, and changing octaves and stuff like that. And to see how you are all using it kind of made me think of how you can approach that in a completely different way of what I was used to hearing it as. So it was funny in listening to the new EP, and I was like, it's weird. I don't really hear the whammy pedal much. And then I started picking it out. I was like, oh no, they figured out a newer way to use this, almost like in a more grown up way where it doesn't have to be so upfront and in your face. It's just a nice thing to complement like background noises and so forth. And it was interesting to kind of think about that, because as I realized that, I was like, I feel like that's a very almost like an interesting metaphor for like growing up as a musician, where it's like, yeah, you can do something and be flashy and make it right up front and be like, look what I can do. But isn't it kind of more interesting and better to do something that fits a song versus fitting a part or making you shine?
I'm gonna kind of sit here for a second,
Okay.
because it's profound. That's exactly what my vision was, and I used it a lot in the verses, for clean guitars, in terms of just the clean sound.
Yeah.
For me, not so much for what Nathaniel was doing on the other side. He was using some more rhythmic based stuff, but that pedal had to be used, right? But I didn't want to do it in a cliche way that had been done so many times, and growing up, it was just part of that, just figuring out a way to do that, but also giving back. On this new stuff, though, I kind of feel like reverting back to my teens and just going nuts and using it and being completely shameless about it and not caring what anybody thinks. And I'm excited about doing that this time around. So you might get some more.
That's a good question, John.
Yeah, great question, man.
Well, I think sometimes I think you as a band and as people sort of exist in this interesting space to me, doing something like this, where I think it's hard for a lot of people to understand that when you guys were coming out, the various avenues for press, for allowing people into you as a band, and more to the point, more personally, those avenues didn't exist. So there's a lot of people who don't know much about you, haven't had the opportunity over 20 years to ask you every question ad nauseum, to where you're like, oh, this question, I'm done with this question, I don't need to answer it ever again. And that's kind of exciting, but it's also kind of one of those where it's got to be interesting to think about a career that essentially has, and this sounds like a backhanded compliment, but it's kind of come and gone, and now you're coming back, and so much of the music business and the landscape has changed, like how you market albums, like the fact that there's social media and you kind of have to be your own PR person and you got to do all these other things to keep your name on people's minds at all times, and you're fighting for everything, like with everything else bandwidth wise that people are going through. And I feel like it's got to be exciting to have the love and passion back to do the thing that you want to do and that, you know, we as fans want, but then having to look at everything and go, shit, everything has changed. How do we do this now? What does this look like? And even I would say probably having to have the honest conversation of maybe looking at each other and going, hey, like we're really going to need to pick up the slack for one another. Like maybe you run Facebook, I run Instagram, so and so does Twitter or whatever. And then thinking about budgets for these things, and just like I said, things that did not exist to be in a band in 2020 or 2002. Sorry. So I just think about a lot of these things that you guys are all probably going through, and just like, how do you navigate these? Like, what has been the process of getting everything back, setting up DSPs? Who did you own the DSPs from the whole time, or was that a challenge of, okay, who do we reach out to take control of all of our stuff if these were set up at some point in our absence?
Yeah, man, that's a really great question. There's been some ups and downs with that, but we have a really good team. We've got a great manager that has been helping us do a lot of that. His name is Mike Sowens. He's a really good guy. Lives out in Los Angeles. Basically, we didn't really have a lot of trouble um, getting access to our DSPs. DistroKid's really good about doing all that. So we were just putting out bottles of lightning underneath a new moniker. We had Revis Music back in the day for our website, I think.
Yeah.
Right. And then it was always hiccups with trying to get your old URL, right?
Yeah.
So we have a new one called Revis Sounds. That's the website, revissounds.com. And
That's the Instagram name too.
yeah, Instagram name. We're having a little bit of a difficult time right now, just trying to locate access to our YouTube channel, because we have so many good ideas that we're going to film live, and we want to post those up on YouTube for people to see and have constant access to. So we're just picking up a couple things, couple pieces here and there, so we can launch this full length next year.
Yeah, there's so with the lull in the noise of Revis, the when we started 2003, when we were recording again 2010, and now, there's been times where it's been sleepy, where things have just kind of just dropped off. And I mean, honestly, like it wasn't organized. We weren't trying to really organize it really, and we didn't have the opportunity to. Now that we do have the opportunity, we're starting to try to collect all the things, put all the ducks in a row. It's going to take some time. We like Robert said, we have a team, and personally, between us, we are um, we are trying to get all of those things taken care of so that everything is appropriate, and so that we can, we are beginning to take advantage of social media, and we don't at the moment, since everything is kind of just now began. I know that we bottles was released a while ago, a few months ago, but like we're just trying to do it slowly so that nothing gets rushed and put out there. We don't want to promise anything too soon without having everything ready. So when it comes to social medias and YouTube and everything like that, we just want to make sure everything's set up before we pull the trigger, because we respect the fans enough not to give them something that's not prepared and not ready yet. But it is stuff that's on our radar.
For sure. There's a little bit of there's a pressure that kind of comes with social media, and this expectations that people put upon you these days. And we very much respect everyone who embarks on that adventure. For us, we're trying to make sure that the music is as good as it can be first, And once we get that wrapped up, then we're gonna enjoy, taking that adventure with y'all. I guess that's the best way I could think about it.
Was there the other thing in listening to the full discography between the singles, the EP, and obviously Places for Breathing? It's interesting to kind of look at the career arc of you guys, because it's a thing where I wonder, was there any trepidation on putting out any of the material when you're starting to put stuff out, because maybe it doesn't quote unquote sound like what you may think others would expect you to be? Because I don't think you have the, I'm trying to think of how to say this. I don't think you have as much leeway necessarily with people, because you don't have like, oh, every 2 years we got a new record. So when the sound maybe changed a little bit, got more adult, kind of pulling from different influences, like you were saying along the way, we haven't kind of had that audio track, like to follow the trail, to follow you and be like, oh, you were kind of doing this here and that set up this down here, maybe some more use of electronics, whatever. We don't kind of have that framework with you. So now when you're putting something out, I feel like there might be a hesitation of like, oh, is this too far away from what people would expect, because we don't have that. I don't know if I'm explaining that or asking that very well, but
No, we understand.
it's
I understand.
No, man,
Okay.
that's a great.
Yeah.
That's great. No, it's really great. I personally, and I don't want to.
No, go for it.
Yeah, I just think that it's actually a little bit more freedom for us. It feels like we have we can do anything we want now. You know what I mean? Because we're a new band. It's like we're new people, right? We are always going to sound like Revis, because it is Revis playing the music, right? So, but the way that we have honed our skills with production, and recording and stuff, it's like we're actually getting what we want out of the speakers. So it's like we're not really worried about what other people think. We're just satisfying ourselves, So
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm gonna go out there and say something kind of crazy bold.
yeah.
I don't think that Places for Breathing honestly captured what Revis really sounded like.
No, it doesn't.
So what's funny is, like, people that hear Places for Breathing, which again I'm very proud of, worked with amazing people to create that album. However, I don't think that it captured what Revis sounds like. So if we're using that as the marker of how we're supposed to sound progressing into the future, I think we're looking at the wrong cast or the wrong mold. And anyone that knows anything or that's close to the band knows that it's heavily vocally and melodically driven, guitar driven by Robert, by melodies that Nathaniel had written, and that anything was up to change when it came to Revis, because every song was asking for something a little different. And I think that moving forward, I think that we do have the opportunity to kind of do whatever we want, because if someone's expecting Places for Breathing, then they should listen to that, right? Because I don't want to stay there. Because
Right.
how do you progress, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
I don't say that as a slight against someone saying, well, it doesn't sound like Places for Breathing. My response to that would be like, thank God, because I
Right.
don't want it. We don't want it to.
Yeah.
And so, like, I definitely think that that I'm very excited about where we're going. I kind of lost my train of thought, but I think that the progression that's happened naturally is something we're thankful for.
It's so
Right.
thankful, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll hear it, man. We'll send you an advanced copy. Do you mind if we do that once we get
Okay.
some?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Absolutely.
Well, so it's interesting that you say that, Justin, and I'm glad that you said it before I'm going to say what I'm about to say, because I think kind of the other side of when I think about you as people and as a band is, it's the best with the analogy I came up with is, it's almost like you're being judged from being in high school. And now here you are as an adult, and people are coming back to learn who you are, but their frame of reference is who you were 20 years ago. And I would be willing to bet anybody who has a 20-year gap of getting to know someone, either way, whether you like how you felt about them or vice versa, I would hope most everyone's answer to, well, are you the same person you were back then, would be absolutely not. There are some characteristics that I've carried over and that were authentically me, but I have changed, and I just through experiences in life, like that's just what happens. So to me, how I asked the previous question probably maybe came across a little bit as like, oh, people are going to listen to the band and be like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting. Therefore, it's, I don't want to say bad, but it's like a thing where I could see people being like, oh, I'm a little disappointed because this isn't what I know. Whereas I would listen to it and go, I'm more interested to see where you are now because there hasn't been anything. And so if I liked you back then, I'd be intrigued to find out, personifying your music as a person. Who are you now? What are you about? How have you changed? Do we align anymore? And sometimes I think that's something as I have gotten older, and I hate to say it like this, but where I come to realize in going through therapy and setting boundaries with people, that sometimes it's okay to understand that you don't serve a purpose for me anymore. Like, we had our time and it's great, and I will not, look back on those memories badly, but I'm not that person anymore. And where you and I are in our lives currently, I don't need you anymore. And I don't feel like I'm adding value to yours either. And it's okay. And I think that's a hard thing to kind of understand and navigate as you get older, because feelings are involved and people feel lesser than or something. And I don't want to be the cause of that for somebody. But I think like I said, the more I've really been thinking about the band's career and you as people, musically and literally as people, it's so weird to think about, like, you existed and then you're gone and now you're back. And that's interesting. And like, I'm not the same person I was I was a senior in high school when Places for Breathing came out. Then it's like, am I the same person from my senior year? Absolutely not. I don't even look the same. I've gained weight and things like that. So it's a thing to me where I just think it's interesting to, like I said, to look at it and go, how is it for you guys? Because I feel like it's just got to be interesting as artists and as creative people. And I've talked about this on the show before, but obviously not with you. So I'll pose this to you, where you essentially have to live in 3 different times at once: your present, your past, and then the future, because you're creating something now that we're all going to listen to at some point in the future, and you're being inspired by those things right now, but you still have to be and exist for people as you were 20 something years ago. And I don't think that most people think about that when they are talking to or watching their favorite bands, of like, oh my God, I loved you when you put out Places for Breathing. And you're like, cool. I mean, that's an awesome thing. And I really do appreciate that. I'm not that same person.
Yeah.
And that's got to be hard to navigate.
It is, dude. And I've been in California for 24 years. Since we moved out there with Revis and making that record when I was 18, and now being back here. I'm in the same studio right now where we cut our demos before we even thought about moving to California.
Yeah.
I mean, before we even imagined that, we were downstairs right over there cutting some of our first tunes. Actually, our first tunes ever.
Yeah.
So we're in the same room making a record now, and being in Southern Illinois after Cali and having that perspective and experience, it's like the only thing I can tell myself is to be extremely present every day. Even though we have to be in the future, in the past, and like all these things, like you said, because we're trying to bring back some nostalgia, even though some people don't like even saying that word. I'm trying to bring some back for me, because I haven't listened to Tool. I've been playing with Lauryn Hill and Eddie Money and all these different people. I haven't listened to Tool since I was like making our first record. And the other day I'm driving down the freeway, blasting some songs. I just felt alive, man. And then I put on some Mad Season. Hadn't listened to that in 15 years.
Yeah.
Just felt alive, and all this rock at 41 years old is making me feel awesome.
He's blasting Mad Season. I'm blasting ABBA.
You got to get those pop sensibilities in, though.
So, let me. I love ABBA. So like anyone that's come that listens to this, like they were brilliant. Anyways, one thing I wanted to touch on was that if someone was to say, I love Caught in the Rain, my response isn't, and I think that anyone that's been doing it as long as we have, isn't to say, I can't, how dare you like only that song? How do you not know my new song? Well, I don't know any of the new Pearl Jam songs, but I'm sure they're good, right? But like the songs take on a persona of their own, right? Like, and so like they stand alone. And so it's easy um to respect where they're at, that's because as well as I do that there's songs in your life where you're like, that song is attached to these memories, right?
Right.
And so songs are attached to memories, therefore they're important. But I don't know if they're important because of the song. I think they're more important because the song's attached to the things that were going around in the person's life, right?
Right.
And so I can respect that because I love people and I know that history, that the things that get attached to songs actually mean something, right? Because it's either healing time, a sorrowful time, a happy time. And so it's easy to kind of be cool about it because I know that personally I have that with songs from other bands and other artists. And so it's easy to be cool with people being like, I love Caught in the Rain. It's like, even if you don't like the new stuff, I'm glad you like it. I'm glad it was there for you when you needed it.
Well, I always think that's the interesting thing about getting older with music and stuff, and especially now in the day and age of people re-recording everything, and we can probably pick that apart and be like, it's probably because you want to make it sound like how you've been playing the songs live for the last 10-15 years. Maybe you're doing different things with melodies, or extending this part or doing something. But then I think it even goes back to we signed a shit record deal and now it's up and we can re-record our music and we can put it out and actually get more of the royalties and pubs and stuff like that go back to us, which then in turn we can then put back to and reinvest into us as a band and recording budgets and whatever. That it becomes another ancillary avenue for revenue. And it's always interesting to kind of break down those kind of things, because I enjoy learning more behind the scenes stuff, like why do these things happen, what's going on. I know a lot of people are starting to come around. I'm starting to get more comments, and I'm interested. There's a chat that I'll have coming out probably 2 or 3 episodes before this one will drop, where for like an hour out of the 5 hours we talked, an hour of it is literally like, because this dude's in a band, several bands, and is kind of like a hired gun, but he's doing a new project on his own with some friends. And we talked about, why didn't you sign with a label right now? Why not have a manager? Why are you doing this all by yourself? Is it because you understand that currently you could spend the money, you could do all those things, but it's essentially not worth it right now? You're not going to get a good return of investment. And because you can own your stuff, that it creates now a new revenue stream right out the gate for a new band that you can then reinvest back into all these other things. And it was really cool to be able to kind of break down all that stuff from someone who's been long established in their career in the industry. And they're kind of approaching this as a brand new band. Like, this is what we're doing. Yes, we have some legs up with what we can do. However, this is why we choose to navigate the business side of this the way we are currently. And to me, I think you guys are in a really interesting position, because obviously you said earlier you have a team, but I feel like it would be interesting to see and hear how you're navigating your business side of things, if you don't mind talking about some of it, because I think, like I said, bands who listen to this at whatever level they're at, and I'm going to say the demographic of your fan base is going to be older. So maybe some of the things that you're traversing right now as in your career might help somebody who's listening to this figure out some of these things that they're kind of stumbling with right now. If you don't mind answering some of those things.
Yeah, you want to go first?
Yeah.
I have a couple pieces of advice to myself that I always try to wake up with, is just patience, and perseverance. Doesn't matter what's going on, and then that falls underneath the umbrella of kindness. That's our business practice, pretty much. But getting going in a modern world, is it's really not that hard to do. You just kind of have to start with small building blocks. A lot of people are talented at constantly posting, you know. I think that's really cool. There's nothing to knock on that. Revis isn't there yet because we are so focused on the music, and we're putting everything into that. So business wise, we're kind of, planning on planning, if you will.
Okay.
Like we're planning on planning for the early part of January of starting all of our rollout for like a spring release, right? But that being said, look, man, we're 6 months out, of even really talking about this online, you know, um, in a very very public way with artwork and everything, right? But we're still working on it every day. So I think that's the thing you have to do is even though you're not growing in people's eyes, you're constantly growing. I think that's a rule you got to have. You're,
Yeah.
you're moving forward. You don't have to be vindicated for growth that people don't see. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
it's great to be online constantly for the fans to check it out. Revis has always had a little bit of mystery to
Hmm.
us, and we've never been super public, like you mentioned earlier. And I don't know if we're just naturally keeping that going, or if I really don't know how to even think. We don't really think about that much. It's just
Well,
being
yeah.
ourselves, I guess.
Yeah, I think that would I think that we want to have more out there. Again, though, like what I said earlier, it's all just kind of starting again, and so we're trying to get a lot of stuff ready so that whenever it does roll, whenever everything does start to come out, that it's going to be pretty continual,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And one of the business things that you talked about to me the other day that I thought was cool was like when you're in music or art, business kind of is like it's a weird word. So what we're trying to do is really capture some cool songs that we like we're covering some tunes, and we're doing that live, and that's like gifts to our fans, I guess. Just like if they like them or not, they're still gifts. That'll live for free on YouTube, and that kind of stuff. I think is a great move, just in terms of being creative in a modern world and just kind of giving as much as you can back to the fans any way possible. You know.
Yeah, and something I would touch on, and I won't go too far into this, but like you mentioned, re-recording songs or something like that. That's not something that we would be against. That's not something that we have like on the immediate schedule by any means. But it's been a discussion with management. It's been a discussion on how we would approach it, what would be the most tasteful way, what we would change if we changed anything.
Yeah.
For me personally, it sounds interesting. It sounds like playing with dynamite, though a little bit, because again, going back to what we said about, oh, I love this song, and then you put out a different version of it, and people are like, well, that's garbage. It's like, okay, well, because there's an immediate mirror to judge it against, right? You're looking at like, and honestly, and I say this because I've been just as guilty of it. It's music is so easy to just judge, right? You hear it and you're like, boom, judgment, right? Because as humans, we're kind of ignorant that way, like it's like the whole it is like Pavlov, it's the whole thing of like, I heard the bell, I salivate. So like when it comes to music, one of the things that I've learned getting older is like, I'm gonna have to listen to that a few times, right? I need to like sit with that. And sadly, unless you're a musician or unless you're a deep thinker in music, you're not ever going to go that deep into listening to a different version of a song by the band. You're just going to stick with what you know, right? Because nobody likes
Right.
change, right? Unless they desire the taste of trying it out. You know what I mean? It's just like it's like trying a new food. As a kid, you're like, I don't want to try that new food. I like chicken nuggets. And then you try something that your mom and dad has been saying has been good the whole time, and you're like, I wish I would have been eating that for a long time. And the same goes for
Right.
for all of our senses. I don't know if you can relate to that or not, but I have to say that.
Yeah, man, and maybe we are, as a world, like kind of overwhelmed by a lot of exposure to so many different things,
Hmm.
and that's why I guess, in terms of business stuff, just doing making tiny moves that are true to yourself and to your craft, and true to what you really want your business card to look like, or
Right.
your painting to be. Just being so genuine to yourself about that, and also open minded with your coworkers and stuff like that. But just that passion, but puttiness, I think in a band is what you gotta kind of
Yeah,
have.
you have to be water.
You gotta be what
Yeah.
Yeah, but I will say this, be water. The if it happens naturally, the re-recording of old music or whatever regarding what you brought up, like then it's going to happen, right? If it's forced, oh, what a disaster! You're just waiting, you're just waiting on a can of worms.
Right.
So if it ever happens, it'll happen naturally, and it'll happen.
And I will say this in terms of if we do go down that path, we will please ourselves.
Yes.
So at least the fans can know that, wow, they're really happy with this to put this
Right.
out. Right, because this is like,
it won't be because we thought we had to,
right?
Because we want to.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one thing
I think what gets interesting about things like that is, Justin, you were kind of saying like some people don't like change, and I feel like when I listen, it's why I kind of like listening to songs from demo stages all the way through like first mixes, pre-pro, all that kind of stuff, because it's interesting how something as minute as how do you mic an acoustic guitar and what are you doing to it when it's in the DAW and how you're having it presented. Because sometimes, like, I remember reading, and I can't remember the artist, but like someone was talking about how like I handed this off to like our first AD or whatever, like in the studio, and I come back and the like acoustic guitar is just super bright, and it's like, this is a sad, morose song. It's like, it's too bright. That's not the right vibe. You have to change how you're mixing and setting up this acoustic instrument to match the tone of what this song is trying to evoke. And so even from something as minute as how are you like miking an instrument, how are you mixing it when you have it in with everything else, changes a song so dramatically that to then even see, when some of the like the as a lot of my friends call it, like kind of the sprinkles, like when you're going and overdubbing and adding textures and layers, that took away a little bit of what we were trying to do. That's a little bit too much. Like hearing all the different ways that a song could have gone is always infinitely fascinating to me, because it's truly an exercise, I think, in self-control or lack thereof a lot of times, because I think most musicians and creatives would endlessly toil with anything if they didn't have a deadline and be like, I have to submit this because like it's got to go on the record, it's going for mixing and mastering for the vinyl, all this other stuff, it's got to be done. And I think that's the only real reason a lot of people stop messing with songs to get it perfect or whatever. But I think the journey along it is interesting, and I think it showcases and speaks to a lot of the people who are making it. The choices you're making. Why are you making those choices? As you get older, realizing you're probably not making those choices anymore. I still have this thought in my head, and I kind of apply it, I think, to us as people, but I for the sake of this analogy, I apply it to musicians. But it's interesting when I talk to people, and some of these albums that they put out when they were kids are hitting 20 years old or whatever, and they're looked at as seminal in their catalog or whatever, and it's like, I didn't know what I was doing. Like I was new to all this, and it was exciting, and everything was fun, and the rigors of touring and the being told you're great, and then the next record comes out and they're like, you're shit, you suck, we're dropping you, and you're like, wait, a minute ago everything was great and you loved everything I was doing, and now you don't like anything I'm doing, but I don't know what has changed and I don't know why. And so when you kind of start thinking about that, it almost becomes this thing. I wonder if our lack of awareness and lack of insecurities when we're younger allows us to make art or be more bold in our choices because we haven't been beaten down with ridicule and negativity yet. Or if there's actually something more refined as we get older, because we understand that we need to be more limited in our things and kind of be confined a little bit to a box, so we're not going in all kinds of different directions and kind of just aimlessly wandering versus having a sense of purpose and direction. So I always think it's kind of interesting growing with bands. And I'm starting to get old and sound like my dad a lot of times now, where, when I get, all the emails with the new records and, there's 17 adjectives to describe this band and why I should have them on the show or why I should be interested in them. And a lot of times I'm like, man, if you have to go through 7 paragraphs to get me to be interested, I probably am not going to be, because you didn't go, here's the song, just listen to it. Like Joe Perry said, let the music do the talking. And if the music ain't it, then I don't care how great of a writer you are to make me feel like I should want to listen to it. I just don't care. And I think by and large, I think that's kind of the thing that gets interesting all these years later now when I listen to music is if I hear something and it reminds me of a band, I'm usually just going to go, I'm going to go listen to that band because I really like what they do. And I don't want to hear someone just doing a copy of that.
Yeah.
It's not authentic, I guess.
Yeah. Well, gosh, like just strictly from this experience that we're having right now together with this this new record that we're making, I didn't know what to expect in terms of what the songs were going to sound like when we started writing at the beginning of June.
Yeah.
Is that when
Yeah.
we had just got done with a little run and we started kicking around the idea of going into the studio and knocking it out quickly as we could, because David lives in Austria, Bob lives in Peoria, so we just had to like coordinate that. But we didn't know what the songs were going to be like, and I'm kind of subconsciously sketchy, if you will. But at the same time, very excited, right? And I thought to myself, I don't think I've ever been in a more I don't think I've ever been in a stronger position to contribute to Revis, with what I've learned, and what I've been able to hone on my production side of stuff and whatever. And we started writing, and maybe like 6 songs deep. Right now we're like 16 songs deep, but when we were like 6 songs deep, I was like, wow, it's not what happens to the person, it's how the person reacts to it. You know what I mean? And like that's what's going on with this music for us, because it's like I can hear experience in these tunes. I can hear maturity, especially with 21 years of a gap. Because we were kind of limited in our resources with Bottles of Lightning. I don't want to say very limited, but kind of. And it took us a long time to get that 6 songs together.
Yeah, what was the time period? I mean, just
like 2019 to and we wrapped it up in like the summer of 23 and then put it out in May 2024, right? So and it just took us a long time because of everybody's schedule and life, but to have 16 demos right now in a couple months and us kind of flowing, with just folder after folder, song after song.
Yeah.
It just makes me feel like, yeah, man, we took all this shit that happened to us, in our lives, and we've gathered it and we've embraced it, and we're happy to be here with it, with our baggage. And Justin's allowing me. He's like, it's okay to put it down for a minute, man. Like let's make some music, and it's that right there is pretty profound to me, I guess. When you just embrace your past and all the mistakes, and you also know that it's not a part of you anymore. It's there. Yeah, you can hold on to some of the meanings and the ideas and the lessons, but it's good to just accept,
Yeah, I mean, like we knew that we wanted to write new music, right?
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of a different dynamic at the and with writing, and we Robert and I just kind of started. I remember you saying, what are we gonna do? We're gonna write. I'm just like, we're just gonna write smash songs. We're just gonna write a bunch of awesome songs that we like, that we like.
Yeah.
And we just started putting ideas down, and it just started coming, and they haven't stopped. We've got a lot, 16 so far. We've got a lot. Our goal. If I'm saying too much, tell me to be quiet. But our goal is to write, 25. 25 to 30 songs so that we can put out we want to put out good music. We want to put out a record that's beautiful. I know a lot of people, it's not like we're trying to compete with Places, because we're not, because it's not going to be Places. However, I know that people love Places because every song is quality. Every song, it took time for that album to exist.
Yeah.
And with these songs, we just want to make sure that we don't just, oh, we wrote 10, those are the 10 you get. We want to write
Right.
25, 30 songs. We want to pick songs that sound good together for a future album, and then have other songs for different avenues.
Yeah.
Not every, because every song is like a feeling or an idea, and not all of those are cohesive, right? It's not that they don't all sound like Revis, it's just that, because they do, because I'm singing it, he's playing it, Dave is playing drums, Bob playing bass. It's that it may need to be for something else. And so we're trying to, think about that as we're writing, and as we write new songs, we're like, okay, this maybe goes over to this category, this goes over here, we might save this song for this. Of course, when it comes to us, everything's changing. Every day we come in and we're like, hey, I had this idea.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, that song changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's it, man. I feel thankful for all of the Places for Breathing stuff, man, because we got to learn so much at a young age. It was like college almost, It's pretty dope.
I mean, the music industry and the landscape of the music industry back then, like looking at it and thinking about it retroactively, it's really interesting to see how like a lot of the things that were starting to happen, with like, Napster and like file sharing and stuff like that, like how that has changed. You were starting to see more in the early 2000s. You were starting to see, and I don't know if this is more of a label thing, if this is just the ease of access to getting digital equipment, like smaller camcorders that weren't so pricey and you could take with you on tour, to where you were starting to see more making of records, or tour DVDs, essentially, of like, here's the album cycle that we were on, and getting to know more about us as people. Like, it sort of was this weird crux of like what everything was kind of shifting to where it's essentially what we have now, where you're learning more about, I had the content is king, essentially, is what it was. So it's interesting to kind of look back and be like, yeah, in the early 2000s, like that's sort of where a lot of changes were starting to happen. I think what gets kind of interesting, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question, Robert, you were saying a few minutes ago that you sort of had limitations when doing bottles. And to me, I would almost ask, and again, I feel like this is such a therapy way that I approach things now, but with intent. So something I try to do on a daily thing is to approach things from a more positive perspective versus one of negativity. Because I think, like a great example is a friend of mine was looking to go to rehab potentially. And at the time when we were having a conversation, this person was making the comment like, when I get out in X amount of time, or when I get to escape, that was the phrase he used. When I get to escape this place in like 8 or 9 months, I'm looking forward to, hanging and stuff like that. And I was like, you can't go in with that mentality. Like, you don't, like, just simply changing it from I get to escape to I'll have earned the ability to come and get out of here and go see you. It'll make that 8 or 9 months completely different. Like, just going in with more of a positive thing of like, this isn't a punishment. This isn't something that, I don't want to, I'm sure you don't want to do it, but it's a thing where it's like, just don't look at it as a negative, because all you're going to do, you're not going to take any of the things that people are trying to give you to make you a better person. And I don't think you're going to get as much out of it. And I think a lot of that is also listening to a lot of podcasts and people who struggled with recovery, and their whole thing was, I didn't want it. And I think it, again, starts with just a mentality of like, if you don't want it and you're not looking to get something positive out of this, your return of investment is just not going to be there. And so I think when I hear you say we were kind of limited in what we could do with bottles, it makes me want to ask, in those limitations, what were the things that actually made it better because you didn't have a wealth of resources?
Absolutely. That's a great question, man. The limitations helped me learn how to become a better mixer, just in terms of us taking our product and being like, well, we're not going to go into debt over this. We're not going to go hire a big mixer or a big producer or anything. We're just going to like do this ourselves in-house and give it to our fans. Right. That was limited by setting up in a tiny cabin in the middle of Carmel Valley and in a corner next to a fireplace in an untuned room, and just constant car tests and never getting discouraged on mix 18 or whatever it was. You know what I mean? It was just learning and being excited about it the whole time, never having any kind of negative thoughts. But the excitement of just being back with the guys made the limitations kind of feel obsolete. One of the things early on that happened is production wise is David had sent stems of his drums from Austria that he had done. He didn't even send the multi files, of the different mics and stuff. So those stems sounded so damn good that he had mixed on his board and everything, and I was just like, well, they're a little loud for the overall output of everything, so I'm just going to turn it down, but I don't even need to touch the EQ, you know what I mean? And that cool collaboration with him and just kind of committing to that early on and not really chasing any kind of frequencies down the rabbit hole or mixing or whatever. It was just like a really cool learning experience. I was limited because I couldn't raise or lower the snare, or I couldn't do whatever, certain things, but it was like, this is great. This is so much fun. It's perfect. Great job, Dave. We're rocking, and that's a small example of just, what it was like to be limited, but not really care.
Yeah, we had like a couple years prior to you final producing and mixing it, we had done the vocals here at Miss Under Studio in Murfreesboro, Illinois. And we did like 7 or 8 songs in like 4 days.
I think we did 10 songs.
Yeah, we just basically, like, they flew in. He and Nathaniel flew in, and we came here, and it was just like sing for 8 to 10 hours, maybe longer.
You did like 4 songs in 1 day.
Yeah, like we were just like, because we knew that we had to get him, Robert, all the vocal tracks so that he could mess with them later, when he went out west. And so another limitation was the fact that if he was, while he's mixing everything, if he felt like the vocal needed to go somewhere else, as of right now, I could be like, okay, throw the mic up, let's try it out, but for for those songs, he had what he had, I'm not saying that there was bad stuff. I'm just saying there was no flexibility in, hey, Holmes,
right,
jump on the mic, I want you to try this note,
Here's a good example. One More Day, we needed Holmes' daddy to lay down a little verse bridge, and he's like, well, what kind of mic, and I was like, well, maybe just for now, try throwing it down on your voice memo, maybe throw headphones in and then just on one phone and then throw it down on your voice memo. And he did such a good job singing it that it just like perfectly fit. And we just threw the voice memo onto the track and mixed it in there. And then there's the vocal for the bridge, you know what I mean? And instead of overthinking it and being like, oh, we got to get a tuned room and
survive.
Survive. It was an awesome moment. Yeah. No limitations, man. Just get her done.
See, I feel like it's those things, like those adversities and struggles, maybe, that when you're in it, you're like, oh, this is so less than ideal. It makes you maybe second guess a lot of things, because you're like, it would be greater if I had more time, more whatever, more everything. I think a lot of us assume that if we had more, that it's better. But I think it also becomes this thing where when you have less, you then kind of appreciate what you have and make the most of it. I mean, you can apply that to a lot of different facets of life, but it's a thing where I think, obviously going into the writing and recording of, the new stuff you're working on, I'm sure that like there are things that happened because it had to on Bottles that you're able to now go, actually, that worked really well. Let's kind of try this thing again. And it maybe seemed limiting at the time, but now you're like, actually, that's a pretty convenient way to do this and approach this thing. I feel like I'd also am interested to learn, in this day and age, it seems like the music industry is sort of in an impasse of, do we go back to, the 30s and 40s and 50s, actually I should say more like 50s and 60s, of kind of doing more singles based songs and dropping. And obviously with vinyl and 7 inches and stuff like that and record store days, I think that's kind of added to that. But I think also we now live in an environment where we're all fighting for space, essentially, to break through the noise, to get to your fans, to get to whomever. And so, we exist in this plane now where you'll see people, and I think Robert and Justin, you both were kind of making the comment about doing things for yourself and making, being happy with it in that capacity. I get frustrated when I see people, like, a new song come out, and, like, a great example. Kendrick Lamar and Drake had, like, some beef, and they were putting out songs, diss tracks, and so forth. And you were getting people who were like, a song had been out for not even 2 hours, and you're getting dissertations essentially from, bigger blogs and so forth about what does this line mean? What does it mean in the grand scape of the artist and the rivalry and all these other things? And it's like, man, this song's been out for 2 fucking hours. Like, you couldn't have possibly really understood it in conjunction to everything else and really given it its time. Like, you just can't. And I think we're just in this day and age now where everyone, literally, you'll see it first to what? You commented 10 seconds at first on a video of a song I just put out. And what did you do? Nothing. There's no way you listen to that song in 10 seconds of me putting it out. It's not, it gets frustrating when I see that, because it's just like, you're not adding any value to the thing that I or whomever have put their time and effort into. And it just gets kind of frustrating to see. But it has created this thing now where I feel like some people, like myself, I think I still like albums. I still like sitting down with something, figuring out how much of the track listing was paid attention to. Was this song put here for a certain reason? And I'm that person on occasion where, and I've even asked artists this on the show, where I'm like, hey, I noticed in the bridge to this song, it has this melody, and then it comes back as the main melody for the chorus 2 songs later. Was that intentional? Like, how did that happen? And people are like, I didn't even realize that was a thing. So it's interesting when you kind of, like I said, try to take everything in and give the art its fair shake. I don't feel like people are willing to do it as much anymore. So when I hear that you have 15, 16 and you want 30 song ideas, I go, okay, is the vibe, and especially Justin, when you're saying, oh, maybe this one needs to go over here, that sounds more like EP stuff, where it's like, okay, this is a vibe. This EP is this vibe. It was all recorded and the songs were all written in the same writing sessions, but I see it kind of going, maybe this is the new way of things of, we're going to write and we're going to continue to write, but this EP is going to be this. And maybe you don't like this. Maybe it's more ABBA-ish, where it's a little bit more electronic, very pop hook laden. Maybe it's going to be more 70s rock with, singer-songwriter-y kind of thing, like a Steely Dan or something, like, and it can sit on that. And it's okay if people don't vibe with that one, because the next one's coming and then the next one's coming, versus we're putting out 10 to 15 songs and then that's all you're getting for 2 to 3 years, whatever that album cycle is going to look like. And then we're starting to write again from there. I am intrigued to see how you're going to navigate that as artists at this point, given the landscape of the music industry currently.
Yeah. Well, now that we've started the ball rolling again with Revis, I don't think we're going to stop writing ever. There's just too much ease and access to having a rig around anywhere to be able to continue putting down ideas. We have a really simple system for getting ideas into the box to where we can get them over to Austria to where David can play on them. So all this stuff is like fluid now for me, just in terms of the way that it was and the way that it is, and so in terms of vibes, man, I don't think we're like capable of doing a song that'll sound like ABBA, even if we were going to try to do an ABBA song. I don't think we're capable of doing a song that sounds like Queens of the Stone Age, even though we wanted to write one that sounded like Queens. You know what I mean? Like we just have this thing to where when we end up ultimately doing it, when we're in the room together, it sounds like Revis, and I'm thankful for that, because we have a little bit of a frequency collaboration.
Yeah, I think that, like, One is that when we do want to write a song that's similar to a Queen's song or something, we'll listen to Queens and then we just like, okay, let's write a song because I like that. We don't try to make it sound like them. We'll just like it's just inspiration, like somebody looking at Van Gogh and then doing a painting. I think that's a pretty comfy thing to do sometimes for.
It is, man. And we try to treat these like our babies or our puppies, as much as we can, and we nurture them. And if they ever like get to a point where they get a little stale or something, like we never get discouraged. And
Sure.
so and we're always like, okay, well, we're just gonna let this one marinate for a little bit while in the fridge, a little bit longer, and then we'll pull it out and see if it's ready. And that has never been a practice of mine. I have always
Mm.
been very hard on myself. I've always been like, ah, no, 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 put your nose back on the grindstone and get this done. But this freedom this time that we have has allowed us to gather a lot of material quickly because we've just been kind of soft on it and making sure that song to song is nurtured.
Yeah, and I think another thing that we're not afraid of is like, as I said, this song may fit well here, it may fit well, this one may fit well there, whatever, wherever they're going to be organized. But like, I don't think that we try to make songs sound like Revis, like a Revis song.
Mm-hmm.
We just write songs, and like some of them may be bluesy, some of them may be, pop, some of them may be heavy rock, some of them may be alternative, more alternative, not grunge sounding. It just depends on where the song leads.
Mm-hmm.
And so like it's still a Revis song though, and so like and honestly I don't care what I don't say it to be mean, but I don't care what anybody thinks. If they don't think it sounds like a Revis song, well, it is a Revis song because we wrote it. So
Right.
like it's cool if you don't like it. Like it's cool if you don't like it. It just means that you don't like that style. And we're never trying to fit them all into something. You know what I mean? It's just like the song idea comes, we're writing it. Let's see where it goes later on. Let's just get it down. You know what I mean? That's our main focus is
Right.
to like put the song down, make it as awesome as we can.
And not to interrupt, but
No, no,
there's been like two or three times where you have said to me throughout the process in the last month, well, this one's going on the record.
sure.
And then maybe a couple of songs later, it's like this one's going on the record. And then you start to kind of look over the past 2 weeks. You're like, oh, I kind of see some continuity going on. I see it's why he's saying that. And then you start writing some riffs that kind of lean that way, and then things just kind of fall in line.
Yeah.
Well, or that's how it's going for us right now. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's not always like that, but it's pretty dope.
I don't. I mean, like, I think it's great to like have an idea and shoot for it, but to have an idea and be stuck in it, oh, that sucks. I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Like, we have to do this. Like, it has to be. These. It's just like I don't want to do that. Like,
Yeah.
you're not. You're only shooting yourself in the foot when you go about it like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
This might be a weird question. Okay.
I was just
I was
going
gonna
to
say
say
this
this
might be.
bandwidth a little bit. You know what I mean? That bandwidth that you have to write songs. If you get hung up on the verse and the chorus, it's just you gotta let it go for a little while and then come back to it.
Right. This might be a weird question, but how maybe it hasn't, but has your communication skills collectively in songwriting and interpersonally, do you think that they've gotten better now than they were?
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
way better, way better.
Yeah.
I mean, like, are you talking about lyrically?
No, I mean like literally you as people to each other. Yeah.
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 I think that one of the first things that we discussed when we came in is, hey, just be honest with me. If there's something like me, I can only speak for myself, but I'm like, hey, if something that if an idea that I have is bad, please tell me that you don't think it's right. Obviously, as a friend, you don't say that's bad. You say, I don't know if that's the right approach. Because and I said, Robert, I will not take offense to it. We both want the same thing. It's like a marriage, man. It's like, hey, we're both on the same team. Let's put our heads together and do the best that we can to make this thing go on. And I said that to him. I was like, if it's ever a bad idea, just tell me. We're going to move forward because I'm going to come up with 20 more. And the same with him.
That's it, man. Or check that. Try it. You know.
Check that pride at the door, man.
Yeah, man.
Everybody's got a lane, but sometimes the lanes got to go together because somebody's got a better idea. You know, it's just like, okay, great. You know, it never needs to be like a solo show because man, nothing good comes from that ever.
Ever.
No, I just wonder how that goes because I mean, being married myself and kind of like I said, having a lot of friends, I think something I know for me doing this that I've gotten better at is communicating. I think it's funny when I go back, or I should say, when people comment on older like way older episodes, and they're like, "Man, you need to like shut the fuck up and like let this person talk or this, whatever." And it's funny to like not want to like feel bad or like that. It's like, oh man, that sucks. You didn't like this, but I'm also like, dude, this is like episode 7 that you're commenting on. I'm like 8 years down the road. I've done like close to 500 of these. I've gotten better. I understand how to do this better. I'm more, honestly, it really boils down to I'm more comfortable with who I am now that I don't care. Like, something that I have said for a lot on this, there was someone who was like, your show sucks. I can't believe you get half the people you do. No one listens, no one watches, whatever. And I was like, cool, do better. I was like, that's literally how I started the show. I felt the same way, except for I wasn't an asshole and I didn't go leave a comment on someone's thing. I just was like, I can do better. And so I did. Or at least I feel like I have. And you know what? It's been a crazy, almost 8-year journey. Some of the friends I've made, some of the experiences I've gotten to have, and just these profound moments through saying I could probably do better and I'm just going to try. And to me, the journey that this has gone on and what it's taught me on a personal level, I think is crazy. And I would want someone to do that, whether it's out of spite or frustration or whatever, however you find that source of inspiration, run with it. But it's funny because I think the thing that I've learned as I get older doing this is, it's like I said, even in my marriage, like before we were doing this, my wife and I were sitting on our front step and we were just talking about things. And I've gotten better at, I'm excited about something and my natural inclination is to just yammer on and talk ad nauseum at this thing. And that's not my wife's frequency. So I have to pay attention to body language, pay attention to these things that you guys are doing. Like, it's funny, as I've been talking about a marriage and communication, magically you guys just suddenly both leaned in. So like, I'm looking at that as we're doing this going like, all right, if you're kind of disconnected, you're going to do one of these or things like that. So it gets interesting. And to me, like I said, I know you guys have not been together for a bit of time. So I would wonder, how has your personal communication been? Because I can imagine as younger people probably wasn't as great as it is now.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh yeah.
You care if I comment?
Please.
Okay, so 2 things. and I mean, like, I'm a father of 7 kids, right? I God has taught me so much in my life when it comes to respecting people, and there's 2 things that and that a man should do. A man should be willing to listen to someone he disagrees with, and like compute it, and not just be a moron and say, no, that's not the way I think, right? So listening is so important, and also being honest when you feel about something, and not being a coward and bottling it up and using it as passive aggressive hate. So there's 2 things that a man has to do, and I think that we've both been beaten down by the world enough to where we both know both of those things. Listen to a person's ideas, even if you don't agree with them, and if you feel strongly about something, say something, or else when you get mad about it later, you're the moron because you didn't say anything.
Right.
It's all on you.
Absolutely.
I think that those are things to live by. Like, it's just like in life in general.
Yeah.
I agree, man. And you have. I don't want to be too philosophical here, but
It's
I'll just kind of go.
Saturday, and we got a long weekend. Get philosophical. Let's go.
Right. Well, my dad's turning 74 November 15th, and every day he's just humbling to me because he's like, I don't know what is going on. I have made so many mistakes. I don't have anything figured out. I thought I did when I was your age, and then I just kept getting older and realizing, yep, I was wrong about that. Yep, I was wrong about that. And then seeing him being honest with himself, because my dad, he's
a good dude.
He's a good dude. He's super wise.
Very smart dude.
Very smart dude. And I see how humble he is and going through that. And I just think that when you have perspective on life, even we're still young men. Thank goodness. But I just feel like having that perspective and kind of checking yourself on a daily basis, humbling yourself a little bit, taking on other perspectives, like you said,
Be willing to.
be
at least,
willing to
like,
be willing to listen.
Yeah.
And gosh, man, the world will be a better place when it happens more. I'm sure we'll come around to it. There's more good people than bad, right?
Well, it's really helped. It's helped with our new recording.
Yeah,
Right. I mean, it's not like it's not like we went into this with beef with one another either. It's not like there's been that's there. It's just that whenever you get down and dirty in your recording, you have to talk about stuff like, I don't know about that, or he'll say to me, hey, that part I like. Let's erase the other part and let's just look at that. And I'm just like, okay, cool. You like a little bit of it? Cool. It's not all garbage. No, but you know what I mean. Like, and you have to keep that mentality. But like, I can't believe you don't like those lyrics. Like I'm a golden god. It's like the dude off of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Almost famous.
Like,
oh.
Dennis, yeah, Dennis. But anyways, like you have to have some humility, man, or else it's just like, I don't know, like you're not gonna get the best.
No, man.
And I'm thankful that we've been able to do that with not only between us, but when we send stuff to David and when Bob comes to play bass and stuff, that it's all gonna be like, hey, we have this idea. Or you have this idea, cool, let's hear it out, man. Let's get we all want the same thing, the best product.
Right? One of the songs, Justin had an idea, and he was like, I kind of have this idea for the lyrics to kind of be about this, because that's what we always do. We come up with an idea of what the song's going to be about before we even get going, and I could tell he was looking at me like, I don't think he's going to like this, and I really genuinely did. I loved the idea, and I could see him just kind of become thrilled that he, because he didn't know if it was a good idea or a bad idea.
Yeah, man.
That in his heart, And now it's like probably our favorite song out of everything, and just to see that kind of like blossom that way and take that turn and this turn and surprise us both, it's really fun, man. And it's been happening a lot, but that's being open-minded in this working process is very communicative, vulnerable.
Yeah, being willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, even though we're not sitting in our underwear, it kind of not now. It kind of feels like we always are. And I haven't showered since we started the record.
He hasn't showered in 2.5 months. It's a fine wine.
I've gone past the stink. I'm past the stink.
Yeah. There's a nice rind that's formed.
It's
And
there's there's like a smoke layer. Like right along. If you cut it open,
what is that? Ginger?
I'm gonna get some coffee.
Turmeric. There you go.
Is that turmeric?
I feel like, something I can't believe I didn't really pick up on until I was just thinking about it. But, the fact that you have talked about, sending out the tracks for Dave to do drums on. And then obviously, I'm blanking. I'm terrible with names. But having the bass player. Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, Bob.
But it's a thing to me where hearing that, I think it showcases, I don't know if loyalty is the word, but just the fact that you all want to be a part of what you're creating, because it probably would be infinitely easier for you to just have either you program the drums or you play the bass and just to get it done faster versus letting everyone literally and figuratively put their stamp on their own parts and the songs themselves. So I think that's a really interesting and commendable thing. I think that speaks to the relationship between all of you in writing and recording everything, because like I said, that's not how things happen anymore. It seems like everyone's just like, what can we do to get it done quick, in and out, gone. And a lot of times that's programmed drums. That's someone recording all the instruments themselves.
As a producer, I don't want to like assume that I can hear that when I hear records on Apple Music or Spotify from random artists that are doing that. But having done it myself so many times for other projects or whatever, I feel like it just takes away all the vibe. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And all it takes away all the human interaction that speaks through the speakers and all that collaboration of frequency that we all put out as humans. You know what I mean? And
Right.
with the four of us and all this history we have, those frequencies are entangled now, in my opinion. You know, not to be all like, but I think that it's something that's deep, man. It's deep
I
shit.
do. I think that it's spiritual. I think that it's there's something there that can't be seen, but can be felt when you hear it, right?
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think that Robert said something to me a couple months or maybe a month ago when we were talking about some songs, that someone, maybe everything's programmed or everything is that I was saying I really like this song, and he's like, yeah, man, he was like, that's really good. He goes, but we're a band and we want to sound like a band. We don't want to sound like a singer that has everything, kind of done. Not that there aren't very talented singers that do all of that, but like we're a band, and therefore there needs to be a feeling that each thing is from a separate soul,
Mhm.
from a separate person.
Mhm.
And I think that like it shows, like you said, or that you said, that it really shows when you do hear it, and that's a real thing.
But we have been a little bit about our process, if you will.
Yeah.
David has his killer studio in Austria that he's running, the Mushroom Studio, and he's there working with clients all the time. So he has to track drums there for this stuff, And we make these demos and we program drums to kind of help us sing the song, if you will. And
Right.
and then when we send those demos to Dave, we're stoked on them. We're creatively happy, but we also know that the drums feel fucking stiff. Excuse my language.
Right. No, you're good.
They feel very stiff, and it's like, okay, well, um, we'll get some live drums and we'll be satisfied. It's never like that. We get the drums
Mm.
back. We get the drums back from Austria, and they're not fixed. They're raw. They're perfect, and we get pumped, man,
Yeah.
because we're just been. It's not like satisfied. It's like backflips. Oh yeah, it's like there's the mojo we've been waiting for. There's the human on that element, and then
It takes a song to a whole new level.
man,
Wow.
yeah. So we start muting the demo guitars. We start muting the everything that was stiff.
Robert starts playing through these bad boys.
And getting that mojo going where, you okay, here's an example. There's this little moment where we break down in one of these songs that's going to come out later this year.
Which song?
Searching for Someone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this breakdown, really nice little moment before the last chorus. I mean, dude, 9 times out of 10, I probably would have grabbed the kick drum that comes in on the one and kind of gritted it a little bit, but like we didn't even, we made it a rule. We're not even going to look at the drums. We're just going to put them up in the session and start playing to them. We're not going to, no editing. And it feels so good when it comes in that it's like, we never would have had that feeling, that slight delay of human, stuff that's going on without just committing to playing from these drums across the pond with no editing and just being humans about it and really, really committing to that.
Yeah, and the song taking on life from that.
From that,
Yeah.
from the ground up, because it's kind of the only way to really get it done from across the pond. And I get so satisfied organically. It sounds like a band.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I can just imagine. I can already imagine in my head just like how giddy you probably were when you like got it on tape. Like you were stoked on the drums, and then like I can, because I've it's one of those things, like it really sucks. Like sometimes I wish people as meticulous, and not that I've really done anything to the level of what you've done, but like I had, lived with a roommate of mine, and we would write songs and stuff and spend, a few hours over one song doing the chorus. That's great. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again. That was shit. Do it again. And it's like, it's so annoying. And just to hear the click, gunk, 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 and you're like, fuck, I didn't come in on the right part or whatever. Like, it's such a not organic way to do anything. It just feels foreign and like you're just doing something very sterile. That it's like when you're doing something like what you said, I can imagine sitting in the scene, like, oh, there it is, and like just being so pumped, and like that you will ride that probably that night. You probably went to your significant other and were really annoying, like, I got to show you this thing I did tonight. It was so cool, and they're like, who cares? No one, I don't care. And so it's the thing where when I hear that, it makes me excited because like I can put myself in your situation of like what it feels like when that happens, and it's a very real human moment in a way that we kind of take the humanity out of making records now. I feel like where it's all, like you said, to the grid, it's clean, everything's like super processed, and there's no warmth or humanity to it. And it's funny because I was going to ask you guys, because you were talking about like listening to different bands and music and stuff sort of for inspiration, and the bands that you had kind of mentioned are bands that I think are timeless, and their music, endures decades and not genres, but generations beyond when these things came out. And I've really been trying to figure out, what is it about, we'll say like a Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, or like Aerosmith. What is it about these bands that their music transcends time, genres, generations? People still listen to it that are brand new, listening to, finding their own musical journey. And I think I just kind of unlocked part of it. And I think it's that these things were done when we were making records where it wasn't so sterile. And you were in a room typically recording as one band to a track on tape. And so it kind of required you to be there and be there for each other. And you're getting to look at each other when you're playing the song. And maybe that rip that you're really excited about is about to come, and give it a little extra stank in the studio. And that's what you're hearing. And I think I just kind of unlocked an answer to a question I've had for probably at least 10 to 12 years of why do we go back to those albums and why are they still timeless? And I think that's it. I think I don't know why I couldn't put my finger on that until you just kind of shared that story of we got the live drums, took everything else away, and just played for us in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Rick Beato was interviewing somebody. I can't remember his name, but he's a talented mixer and producer, I think. And he said a phrase that really stuck with me, which was, "We are analog beings," you know. And when you have all this digital stuff going on, to convey us an art that we're so used to hearing, and then you go back and you reference this completely analog music, like Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, or some Aerosmith, like, back in the day, whatever. Like that stuff is vocal through electricity to tape. There's no computer. Like technically, you might be able to say there's some kind of computation going on, but come on, man, it's like complete frequency, right? Going to tape, and talent and harmonies that had to be worked on for maybe 3-4 hours or whatever it is, and that energy comes in to the board, to the mic. And I think the dedication of taking the time to learn your parts and to really get them good. It doesn't matter how long you spend, but like just exciting yourself, man. That I keep saying it over and over again, but getting good enough to excite yourself and put that down to tape in a raw way. I think a lot of more kids are doing it too. I think kids are kind of getting away from like newcomers to the production stuff are getting away from the stiff stuff. And that's cool. It's cool to see.
Yeah. I think there's perfect storms as well. I definitely do think that like there's these special moments and pockets in time where musicians get something. I think that a council of people is probably what helps as well, though. Just having 5 or 6 or 7 musicians that are all well seasoned, or that are all just naturally gifted, coming together, good things are just going to naturally happen.
Yeah,
good songs are just going to naturally take place. I mean, like look at Toto. You know what I mean? Like you have these fantastic studio musicians, and we have one guy who thinks that he has a song, Africa, and they're like, I don't know if that fits on the album, and it's the biggest hit ever, and it's like no, something good comes from many talents. You know what I mean? Like it's just I don't know why, I don't know why, but it does.
It does.
And so like we're trying to work on that mold. You know, everybody. You know, it's
The human collaboration.
yeah.
Yeah, man. Another cool thing about the process is that we don't put any bass at all before we send it to Austria. You know, David is playing to just vocals and some guitars, and
He has a lot of freedom.
he's got a freedom to mess with the grooves. And so when they come back, Bob, get excited. You know, Bob comes in, he's like, I didn't think it was going to go there, but let me lay down some beef. What's for dinner?
Yeah. I don't, Robert, and I don't mean to not steer this question towards you. I just don't know if you have kids or not. So I guess before I ask this question, do you have kids?
No.
Okay. It didn't sound like that. So again, I'll kind of pose this question to Justin. You know, at this point, you know, I would assume from what I can see online, it looks like you have kids that are older now. So how has this whole thing been getting to kind of reintroduce, not to say that music has not been a part of your life, because obviously you do stuff with your church and so forth, and music's a huge part of what you do in your day-to-day life, but to kind of maybe have your kids see a different side of like taking it more seriously and kind of the career side and doing all these things. How has it been to kind of experience Revis 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever iteration this is at this point through maybe the lens of your kids?
Okay, well, great question, and it's going to be a lot funnier and a lot. It's not going to be as impressive as you were hoping. My kids could care less about anything that I do. Now, if I was the backup singer to Taylor Swift, I'd be gold. You know, we'd be like, oh, let's go. You know, all that joking aside, I do have. I mean, my older sons, they actually love all kinds of rock. Like they're like they love anything from the 70s forward. They love music, all music, not just rock. But so they think that it's great. Sometimes I'll bring a song into them and I'll be like, hey Corbin, you know, hey Dash, what do you think about this song? You know, and I'm like, be honest with me. I already think that you think I'm uncool, so just be honest with me, right? And I'll play them stuff, and they'll be like, no, I like this, or I like this bridge, or you know, I really like this part. And so like, you know, they for the most part, my kids could care less because kids are kids, right? And I call kids anything, you know, 25 and under. I got one of my sons flies airplanes now, and I'm like, you just started driving like 4 or 5 years ago. Like, what's going on? Now he flies airplanes. So like, you could care less about me because one of them, they're flying airplanes. Would you care about your dad if you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, real cool, Dad. But none of them care that much. You know, but I mean, like, maybe someday they'll be like, oh, you know that older guy that used to live with us? Yeah, you mean Dad? Did you know he sang in a band?
I think for me, what gets interesting about it, and like, you know, as of when we're recording, it's the newest episode I put out with Mark from Nothing More. And what's been kind of interesting to me, like, you know, my wife and I don't want kids. We don't have kids. But I think it's interesting to think about life through kids' eyes, because I think a lot of times, especially once they kind of start forming more of their own personality, their own thoughts and everything, it just kind of gets interesting to see that happen, to see a person become a person, essentially, from just this thing that sits there and makes noise. And it's a thing for me where, you know, talking with Mark, like his kid right now, I think his kid is like 11 or 12 maybe, but has been doing gymnastics for a few years and like is getting really into that. And so, you know, in the episode that we did, I had asked him, you know, you followed your passion, your thing with music and playing guitar, and like now you tour and you kind of, you know, your kid's at the age now where you can take him on the road with you for a little bit, like during summer breaks and stuff. And he gets to see some bands that he really is into if you're touring with them or whatever. But I look at it and go, you know, he's embarking on a pretty hard road of gymnastics. Like that's a lot of dedication to strength and conditioning, and at such a young age to be so disciplined in your craft that you want to succeed in. It's not something that a lot of his peers are probably doing or going through, other than those in gymnastics with him. But I was like, you know, is it something where you're kind of helping him traverse that of what does it look like? You know, you're passionate about this. This is a hobby. It could become a career. You could take this and go do a bunch of things. However, I can help you sort of navigate this because, buddy, like, let me tell you, like, it's a lot of hardship. It's a lot of sacrifices. It's a lot of not getting to do the things you want to do and not being there for others because this is the thing you've dedicated your life to. What does that look like? And like, are you having those conversations? Is it kind of maybe reinvigorating your passion for your thing, even though you've been touring professionally for a decade plus, like have a good career? Just seeing him embark on this thing kind of reignite that passion into you because you're seeing it happen, and you know it's in your household. So how does it not inspire you? So to me, I would feel sort of maybe the same things happening where potentially your kids at the differing ages they are see you kind of getting back into this thing and getting serious with it and all these kind of things, and kind of seeing the happiness and the joy and the creative outlets you're getting to do, and you know, if it's inspiring them to kind of go down their own creative paths or whatever, because they have an example at home of, I can do this. You know, where is it going to take me? I don't know. But like, here's someone who literally has dedicated their life to this thing. I feel like I have permission to do such as well. And then it kind of possibly feeds back into your own creative, like, you know, battery recharging and so forth.
I think so. I think that I think inspiration inspires inspiration in others. I don't know if you feel this way or not, Robert, but with what happened with Revis when we were so young, I have always had the confidence, or like David Grohl says, the cockiness of, if it needs to get done, I know that it's possible. Like if it like I know that anything is possible, and I don't say that like a fool. I say that as if like someone does it, and I tell my kids this: someone does it. If you want to do it, I think you can do it. Just you have to want to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that it goes into like us jumping into new music. It was just like, well, I don't know, I don't know if we're going to be able to, how much we're going to be able to write. And I told you, I said, no, we're going to do it. Mm-hmm. It's just what we're going to do. Like, so we can do it. We're going to do it again, and we're going to continue to do it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, so like regarding my kids, or I'd say that any adult at all, or any person at all, someone out there does it. It's possible. If you want to do it, work. I mean, like, now, if you are the person on American Idol that Simon Cowell is saying, who told you you were good, then yeah, find something else. But I mean, like, because there's certain things where you have limitations. You know what I mean? Like, that there are certain limitations. However, I say go for it. You know what I mean? You don't know unless you try.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, anything's possible.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But yeah, the inspiration goes everywhere. I mean, like.
Yeah, I think it's funny you brought up Simon Cowell and whatever show he's on now, but I was telling, because someone brought him up recently, and I was like, I don't put much stock in those things. I was like, famously, I remember forever ago, because I'm old, that I remember they had the American Idol, the original judges, when that show first came out. They had him on Howard Stern, and they brought out Josie Scott from Saliva. And at the time, he had, I think, just won a Grammy for that collab with Chad Kroeger from Nickelback that was on the Spider-Man soundtrack.
Yes,
and so he was singing that. He was singing that song, and all three of the judges were like, "Yeah, man, I just don't think nothing. You got an okay voice. I just don't think it's going to be a career or anything for you." And then they were like, "Well, actually, that song that he was just singing was actually it just won a Grammy." He's in a nationally like he's signed. And so it was like one of those things where I was like, you can't always even believe like quote unquote like experts on anything, because like
you're right.
So it's a thing to me where it's like, there's so much art and different types of media that you can consume that someone might be like, this is absolute dog shit, and you're like, yeah, it is. But I remember getting like my neck tattooed by a friend that was here on tour, and we were watching a horrible like directed like HBO horror movie, like B horror movie, and everyone was just ripping on it, and it wasn't great. But I was like, and again, just a shift in perspective. I was like, instead of like shitting on this thing, look at all the successes this thing had. Someone came up with the idea and they went and got funding. Then they employed people to make this thing. Then it got distribution to where we're now watching it on basic cable. Those are all successes. Is it the greatest movie you've ever seen? No. But someone came up with it and then made it. That's a win. Yeah, man. Can't take that away.
Yeah, it's work. Yeah,
it's respectable work. It's admirable, and like if as long as we can try to figure out from like a mass perspective to quit jumping to judgment on everything, man, it'll help us enjoy more. Probably, I don't know if that's fact or not, but I
use these more than this.
Yeah, that's not a lot.
Well, you got you got two of those and one of those, as my dad always said.
Yeah.
It's funny how you get older, you're like, oh man, everything your parents say is generally pretty based in reality. As much as you may not want to hear it. Last question for you guys, because I feel like I want to let you guys get back to creating or whatever your Saturday morning looks like. But what are you guys like? Obviously, we're kind of in the too early to really, and you guys have talked about what you've been writing and so forth, but we're kind of essentially at the halfway point of the year. The year's kind of getting ready to come. I think a lot of people are, I know I am, looking ahead to the end of this year, into next year and so forth. What has been something that has you excited for where you're at now at this point in 2024? And what are you excited about to end the year? And what are you excited about to start next year?
Excited about hitting our goals that we've set for 2024, hitting goals of just getting songs written and getting some things in line for future shows, which we can't go into detail about because we don't know the detail, but we're striving to do more live shows as Revis, and then I know that I'm very excited to get just start the beginning of the new year with maybe a couple new songs, let people know that there's more coming, and then just seeing what happens. It's hard for me to go too into detail about what I'm excited about because I know how life is, and I don't know what the hang up will be or what the fast forward will be on something, but I know that new stuff's coming and I know that people are going to love it, and they're going to be like, wait, that's Revis?
May I
please?
May I drop one thing?
Please.
Do you mind if I drop something?
Yes, drop.
I'm gonna drop something. Just because it's something that we've kind of all committed to, the team, and is that we're gonna try to put this record out to the best of our ability in May, a full length record. We want to start promoting it in the early part of the year. Show wise, we don't know how to get excited yet because we're working on that every day. But like that's one thing that we can kind of control is because we're so far along in the writing process, we have the confidence that we'll hit 30 songs, probably in the next month, and be able to choose good stuff that we will be over the moon about for this second official LP, and between now and then, maybe a couple singles. But I definitely think next year is going to be full of Revis music because we've got so much stuff. We can trickle out some singles after that, and keep the motorboat going. You know what I mean?
This is kind of this is kind of a throwaway question, but something I find fascinating at times. In the day and age now of digital like profilers and stuff like that, Kempers and Axe Effects and all that kind of stuff, Um, are you someone who keeps all your old gear? Like, has it been hard to potentially reset up a pedal board to be able to play anything from any song that you guys have done, or have you adopted a lot more of the profilers and stuff to where it's all just, you know, kind of plug and go?
Yeah. Records are different than live for me as a guitar player. I
Okay.
modelers and profilers are for me. I don't want to like say this towards anybody else, because everybody's got their use for stuff, and I'm not knocking anybody's thing. Please, know that. But I think they're toys. I don't
Yeah.
think they're real I don't think they're real equipment, and they do have their applications.
Yeah.
They do sound amazing. You know what I mean? And there's nothing for that. But like when it comes to just me and being a purist and like going on stage, like the pedal board thing has been so much fun to just let it evolve over my life, that I can interchange stuff here and there and, enjoy that. But it's all about analog for me, big amps
Okay.
and loud electricity, stuff like that,
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, watching old performance videos of you guys, because I still haven't gotten to see you guys play live, but it's a thing where I remember just being so enamored by your pedal boards and just like the foot tapping dance you would have to do. And like, it seems like, especially in various songs where like you get lost in sonic textures and like messing with it, like different pedals and creating noise essentially, and then kind of getting back out of it and having it go back to the song. So it's a thing to me, like where when I see that, it's like that just was the way that things were back then. Like it was more tactile, actual pedals that you're using and manipulating. But now it's not like that. It's a lot easier, and especially for a band that tours and doing fly-in dates and so forth, which sounds like your kid can provide that for you. Can do your fly-in dates and fly in. It's essentially like Iron Maiden. But it's a thing to me where I just wondered, has that changed for you? Like, are you more of like I don't want to tinker with all this stuff. I just kind of want it to be, easier and more streamlined versus here's this massive pedal board and I got to figure it all out. And especially if something goes wrong, because I feel like that's always the crapshoot of like your wiring and stuff like that. Like, where did my signal just get lost at? Like I have 17 pedals and I don't know where it is.
Right. I almost like the adventure, the almost like the the knife fight, like Jack White calls it. You're over there just trying to like get through it. And that's never a struggle. It's like if the struggle becomes real and you got to unplug from that pedal board and go right into the head and then make the rest of the show happen like that. That's a story, that's getting through it organically, and I really love that, man. And always tried to embrace that. I do find it cool when you go see a band that's using a Kemper and everything just seems so seamless and sounds amazing, and it's really cool. I love that, but not for me so much. If I could, just put this out there, when the budge comes back around, if we could have somebody do some tap dancing on the side of the stage, for me.
Oh yeah.
I don't have to do it so much.
Yeah.
I envy Keith Richards. You know what I mean? The guy's like, I don't want to tap dance. I don't want to touch anything. I think that's really cool. That's the way.
Just want to play. Yeah.
If you could afford it,
Yeah.
But hey, man, I saw somebody playing Zach Wilde's Whammy yesterday at a Pantera show online.
Yeah, it's great. His that was Dime's. That's Dime's old tech, and he would do the same thing. So like on different stuff, or like becoming like the whammy pedal, he would do it so Dime could just play. So
that's cool.
That's moment.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
That's the dream as a guitar player, to be like, I want all the cool effects. I don't want to have to physically do them. I just want to play.
I love messing with our delays. Sometimes the sloppiness of coming out of solos with the crazy delays and stuff that I'm manually doing, it creates a little excitement, a little bit of randomness, and it's not the same every night, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I've been a friend of mine, Chris from Crowbot. He does like has a lot of interesting pedals, and one that I've seen him, and it's actually seemingly making a comeback with a few other people I've been seeing lately. But the Ricochet pedal, that's really interesting. I haven't just to watch him use it and how he manipulates like the tone and stuff like that. It's like, I think I want one, but I have no idea how I would even use it. Like it just is like, that looks like a fun pedal I would want just to play with, and then I'll never do anything with it weird noises with it, but it's I don't know. I get lost in that too, where I'm like, I want all the pedals and I don't know what they do. I just want to play with them and then make weird noises and get lost in
That's
that. But
what's
also,
up,
it's
man. Love that.
like last question for you guys to let you guys get out of here. Where can anyone find you or anything you would like to plug online?
Yeah, Revis Sounds on Instagram. Come follow us. We are gonna soon do a guitar giveaway. We're gonna sign a cool guitar, and we want to give it away to our fans. And as long as you follow us and tag a friend on Instagram, then you get a chance to win that puppy.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that. Revissounds.com, and all of our DSPs online. Spotify and Apple Music. Give us some love.
It's going to be real weird if somehow I end up winning that guitar. People are like, the fix was in.
It's always rigged somehow.
Yeah, somehow. I hacked the algorithm and figured out how to put myself in a better position. I do have like 4 different Instagram pages, so I can make that work. Well, thanks again for taking the time to chat, and looking forward to new music and hopefully finally get a chance to catch a show in the new year. So all great things. Thank you guys so much for coming on, and enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you so much, John. We appreciate your time. Great questions. It's been a great time.
Yeah, happy Labor Day, man.
So that was my conversation with Justin and Robert. Want to thank them once again for taking the time, spending a Saturday morning with me, and also for the words of encouragement and well wishes in the chat itself. And also want to extend a more personal thank you to Justin for reaching out to me via text and DM throughout the last few weeks or so, just checking in and seeing how I'm doing. He doesn't have to do that, but the fact that he does, I think, speaks to the integrity of him and who he is as a person. And as someone who does a lot of those same kind of things with my friends, I definitely feel a sense of gratitude for having made a connection strong enough that he would want to continue to just see how I'm doing. So thank you to Robert and Justin for the well wishes and making sure to keep up with what's going on. It's definitely appreciated. And I also realized too, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, because a couple of people reached out and kind of talked about this as well. I know potentially some of the episodes I've done following like very closely after my foot surgery, I'm sure a little bit steeped in it, or maybe I'm coming across as like a bit much. I was thinking about it as I was talking with someone about the Chris Kelly episode, and they're like, "Man, I can't believe you talked to him for like 5 hours." And like I enjoyed all of it, and common sentiment, surprisingly. But I said, yeah, I think that was kind of a byproduct of when all you do is sit in bed and you're watching TV or playing video games. Like that gets pretty boring pretty quickly. Can't do anything else other than just sitting in a chair, because moving around, especially when you're non-weight bearing, is just, there's nothing you can do. So I think some of these episodes, I feel like maybe I came across a little, I don't want to say desperate, but I definitely think that I was so looking forward to having something to do and being able to like communicate with people, because outside of my wife for a little while, like I just sat in the house and didn't see anybody. So getting to do this podcast kind of reminded me a little bit of the pandemic, where it's like I was really thankful that I had this to kind of get me out of my funk of just not being around people. And same thing, I am very grateful to Chris, to Justin and Robert, and pretty much anybody else those first few weeks where I was non-weight bearing, where I had something to do. So if these episodes come across a little extra on my end, I think I've pinpointed that's what it really is just I very much am thankful just to be doing anything at this point, going back in time. So thanks for checking out this episode. I'm going to start wrapping it up. If you would like to keep up with Revis, it's real simple. Revis Sounds, revissounds.com, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, Revis Sounds. TikTok as well. I think it seems like they're kind of trying to build a little bit more on what I would say are more of the current platforms. But it's been really cool kind of seeing them be more active on these things. If you like keep up with Justin, you can find him on Instagram at Justin Holman Rocks. And you can keep up with Robert at Dr. Robert Davis. I did not find Twitter accounts for either of them, but sometimes I feel like there are a lot of people who are leaving that space, and there are also people I feel like never were on it. So I don't recall there being either of those two on there to begin with. But if you do happen to find an account for them, well, let me know, and I'll update this. If you keep up with the podcast, you can find me simple enough, Brew Speak Pod on everything. You can email me at brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com if you have any questions, comments, concerns, guest suggestions, whatever it may be. Greatly look forward to chatting with everybody. It's been great. Everyone's been reaching out with something from the last handful of episodes, which has been great. And I love it. So keep it coming. And also, speaking of love, rate, review, subscribe. Show the love to the show. Wherever you can do it, please do such. Rockabilia, they are one of the most tenured supporters of this podcast. Go support them if you're able to. Rockabilia.com. Use our code BREWtally at checkout and take 10% off your total purchase order. There is just so many great things going on over there. They are collaborating with almost seemingly every big band. Metallica, Ghost, Ice Nine Kills. So much stuff getting ready to go on for the Halloween season that we are currently in. So head on over there, check out some merch, check out all the crazy things. Lava lamps even. I didn't even know people cared about lava lamps, but lava lamps are apparently a thing again. So go get one if you don't have one. I don't know. Just go to rockabilia.com. Go look at their stuff, buy something, use my code, save money. 'Tis the season almost for gift giving and all that kind of stuff. So don't say your boy ain't out here looking out for you and your loved ones while also looking out for your pocket. And for the Brewtally Speaking podcast, I will see you all next week where I chat with Haley from Gore. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll talk to you all next time.